Welcome to our deep dive. Today we're exploring self-discovery and connection through Sophie Grégoire Trudeau's book, Closer Together. You also gave me some scientific studies referenced in it, plus articles about Sophie and her work.
Yeah, it's a really interesting mix, combining those personal experiences with what the experts have to say.
For sure. I think after this deep dive, you'll come away with a better understanding of how our early life experiences can impact our adult relationships, and also how to deal with negativity.
Plus, we'll be looking at the power of play and creativity.
Right. And even some tips for managing that anxiety and sleeping better.
It's packed.
Okay, well, Sophie starts off talking about her childhood as an only child, which really got me thinking about how those, seemingly insignificant moments can really stick with you.
Yeah.
She mentions this fascinating thing where she was really tuned into people's physicality, like even mimicking their movements and postures.
Huh. It sounds like she was really aware of others, even from such a young age.
Yeah. But she also talks about this contrasting feeling of loneliness as an only child and like this pressure to meet her parents' needs.
Interesting.
And she describes these moments so vividly, like when she was lying in bed trying to block out her parents arguing. I think that sense of helplessness is something that a lot of people can relate to, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it really makes you realize how much kids pick up, even when we think they aren't paying attention.
For sure. And Sophie talks a lot about her connection to nature, which she says comes from all the quality time she spent outdoors with her dad.
Makes sense.
She calls him her philosopher and sporadic life coach.
Those early bonds are so important.
Absolutely. But she also talks about the sadness she felt seeing her parents struggling and how her dad became more emotionally withdrawn as she got older.
Yeah, it just shows you that even in loving families, those emotional undercurrents, they really affect kids.
So much. And this leads us perfectly into some of the scientific concepts she explores in Closer Together, like attachment theory and childhood trauma.
Exactly. She mentions this developmental psychologist, Dr. Gordon Neufeld, and how he explains that secure attachment when we're young shapes how we handle intimacy and how resilient we are later in life. And he says that need to feel safe and connected within a family, it never really goes away. And when those connections are disrupted, well, that's where a lot of our wounds come from.
That's powerful, that those early bonds are so fundamental to who we become.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because Sophie doesn't just focus on those big T traumas like abuse or neglect. She also gets into the smaller, more everyday hurts that can, kind of accumulate over time.
Right. That's where she brings in Dr. Gabor Mate.
Right.
He has this really thought-provoking way of looking at trauma. He says, trauma is not what happened to you. Trauma is what happened inside you as a result of what happened to you.
Whoa. That's profound. It's not about the external event itself, but more about the internal experience, right?
Exactly. It acknowledges that the impact of those events, it can be different for everyone.
So we've got this groundwork laid about childhood. Now let's move on to Sophie's teenage years.
Okay.
She really captures those awkward, vulnerable moments, the social dynamics, that pressure to fit in, and she talks about developing an eating disorder.
It's so raw, all those confusing feelings of wanting to belong while also wanting to be seen for who you are.
Yeah. And she doesn't just describe it. She, puts you right there with her. Like when she talks about longing for connection and feeling both confident and insecure about her body.
Oh, wow.
And she even mentions a pretty unsettling encounter with a camp counselor. So it's this reminder of how impactful those adolescent experiences can be, right?
Yeah.
And here she brings up something that I think we all struggle with these days.
What's that?
Technology and how it's impacting young minds.
Oh, yeah, big one.
She talks about Dr. Murray Swingle, who studies all of this.
Okay.
And Dr. Swingle is concerned about excessive screen time and how it could be affecting the development of, things like curiosity and emotional boundaries and social skills.
Right.
And she even raises the possibility of it leading to more impulsivity and anxiety in kids.
It is a tough topic to navigate. It's not about saying all technology is bad.
No.
But it's about acknowledging the potential downsides and encouraging, healthy boundaries and critical thinking.
For sure. And what I thought was interesting was that she balanced this out with her own children's perspectives on social media. What they see is the pros and cons.
Smart.
They understand the benefits, but they also see the potential downsides.
It's about finding that balance, right?
Totally. Because technology is here to stay.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving from the teenage years into adulthood, Sophie is really honest about her struggles to find fulfilling work. She talks about feeling kind of aimless, even though she's talented and she tries all these different jobs.
Hmm.
And she's also dealing with her eating disorder resurfacing.
I think a lot of people can relate to that feeling of searching, trying to find your place, especially in those early years of adulthood.
Totally.
Yeah.
So many of us have been there. But then she has this pivotal moment where she decides to open up to her boss at this advertising firm about her struggles.
Interesting.
And that act of vulnerability, like speaking her truth, it's incredibly powerful for her.
Wow.
Because she finds this unexpected support, and it really becomes a turning point.
It's a reminder that asking for help or even just expressing what you're going through, it can be such a powerful first step.
Absolutely. And it creates these connections and this support that you might not expect.
For sure.
But even though that was a turning point, her path to success wasn't like, smooth sailing. She talks about all the bumps along the way, like having hosting gigs where half the audience was intoxicated or forgetting to pass the microphone during interviews.
Oh, no.
It's so real. It reminds us that success is rarely a straight line.
Right.
And I think it's those shared experiences, those moments of vulnerability and humor that make her story so relatable.
Mm.
And it's not just about her own path either. She brings in other voices, like Katie, who transitioned genders later in life.
Yeah.
And Katie's story is so inspiring. She talks about overcoming the fear of judgment, the internal struggles, and the just the incredible relief and joy that came with living authentically.
I love that.
And she even talks about facing criticism for being too joyful and expressive in her corporate environment.
Really?
Imagine being told off for skipping at work.
Wow. That's wild.
Right. Maybe she realized that societal norms and expectations can be so limiting, even in places that you would think are more progressive.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a good reminder to question those expectations and create spaces where people can just be themselves.
For sure.
Speaking of expectations, Sophie transitions to this broader discussion about connection, love, and relationships.
Okay.
And she brings in some big names in the relationship world, like John Gray, author of Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus.
Oh, yeah, classic.
And Terry Real, who's a renowned family therapist.
Interesting combo.
It's fascinating to see how John Gray's thinking has evolved over time. He talks about this concept of Love 3.0, which is a model for interdependent relationships, where each person is taking responsibility for their own emotional well-being.
Got it.
And it's a real shift from that codependency model, where we expect our partner to fix us or complete us.
I see.
And both Gray and Real emphasize how much our childhood attachment styles continue to influence our adult relationships.
Right. That idea that the past is always present.
Yeah. It can be a little unsettling, but it's also empowering because it means we can learn from those patterns.
Then grow.
Right. And Terry Real gives us some really practical tools for navigating conflict.
Oh, like what?
Like the catch, pause, and repair technique.
I haven't heard of that one.
So it's about noticing when you're getting triggered, taking a step back to calm yourself down, and then intentionally repairing the disconnect.
That's interesting.
It's such a useful approach. Imagine how many arguments could be avoided or at least de-escalated.
Yeah. And it's not about avoiding conflict completely,
Right.
but about approaching it in a healthier way.
Right, exactly. And Sophie doesn't just stop at conflict resolution. She also brings in communication techniques from Harville Hendricks and Helen LaKelly Hunt.
Okay.
They focus on creating a safe space to express your feelings and needs without judgment.
I like that.
It's about moving away from that win-lose mentality and finding solutions that work for both partners.
Yeah, like a true partnership.
Right. All right, ready for a bit of a gear shift.
Yeah, bring it on.
We're going from the complexities of relationships to the importance of physical well-being.
Okay.
But don't worry, we're not going to talk about intense workouts or crazy diets. Sophie keeps it really practical with tools that are easy to implement.
I appreciate that.
She highlights the work of Dr. Jennifer Heiss, who researches how exercise can boost your brain.
Interesting.
She explains how even short bursts of activity can seriously improve your mood and how well you think.
So no more excuses about not having time.
Nope. Even a 10-minute walk can help spark creativity and reduce anxiety.
That's good to know.
And get this, for those dealing with depression, Dr. Heiss says exercise can be as effective as medication.
Wow.
It's amazing what a difference just moving our bodies can make.
Totally. And Sophie doesn't stop there. She also emphasizes the importance of nutrition, like giving our brains the right fuel.
Right.
Specifically, she talks about those powerful micronutrients you find in whole foods.
Yeah, she quotes this expert, Dr. Bonnie Kaplan, who explains the science behind it all.
Like how those essential vitamins and minerals really impact brain function?
It's not about some trendy diet or popping a bunch of
No,
supplements.
but it's about giving our brains what they actually need.
Exactly. And of course, we can't forget about sleep. Sophie provides some pretty practical techniques for managing anxiety and getting better sleep.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
She mentions this breathing technique called cyclic sighing, which helps to calm the nervous system,
Interesting.
and the idea of creating a better sleep toolbox with personalized strategies for winding down before bed,
Makes sense, like avoiding screens before bed.
taking a warm bath.
Journaling to get those worries out of your head.
Exactly, anything that creates a sense of calm and safety.
Yeah, those pre-sleep rituals are so important.
Totally. So from creating calm, we move into facing fear and building resilience. And Sophie has this really cool analogy she uses to illustrate how to manage anxiety.
What's that?
She talks about surfing the wave of fear.
I like that.
It's such a helpful way to visualize fear because, like ocean waves, it often comes in cycles.
Yeah.
So the key is to recognize those triggers like financial worries or rejection or just the unknown and learn to ride those waves without being totally consumed by them.
Right. It's about changing our perspective instead of trying to avoid fear completely.
Exactly. And Sophie's really brave because she shares some of her own personal stories about facing adversity.
Oh, like what kind of things?
Well, she talks about this really scary experience of an intruder breaking into her home.
Whoa, that's terrifying.
I know. And she also talks about dealing with hateful comments and even threats directed at her family because of her husband's political position.
It makes you realize that even those who seem to have it all still face their own challenges.
Definitely, and it makes her so relatable. And she circles back to Dr. Gabor Mate, who we talked about earlier.
Oh, yeah. He was the one with that powerful definition of trauma.
Right, exactly. He encourages this shift from a victim consciousness to an empowered consciousness.
What does that look like?
It's about taking responsibility for our thoughts and actions.
Okay.
Recognizing that we can't always control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond.
So it's about realizing that we have agency.
Yes. And that ties into this whole idea of mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Sophie explores the dangers of having a fixed mindset where you get stuck in negative and fearful thinking.
Right, because that can really hold us back.
And she points out how easily people with fixed mindsets can be swayed by, divisive rhetoric or propaganda.
Yeah, makes sense because they're not really questioning their beliefs.
It's like our own thoughts can become our worst enemy.
Sometimes they are.
So it's even more important to cultivate a growth mindset, being open to learning and evolving even when it's tough.
It's about embracing challenges as opportunities for growth.
And she also talks about the need for discernment and critical thinking, especially in this world where we're constantly bombarded with information.
Totally. It's so easy to get caught up in whatever seems the loudest or most dramatic.
So we need to be curious and question what we see and hear. And she doesn't just mean any kind of curiosity. She brings in this expert, Dr. Judson Brewer.
Okay.
He talks about interest curiosity.
Interest curiosity, what's that?
It's this genuine drive to learn and explore without needing to have all the answers.
I like that.
It's that sense of awe and wonder that helps us grow and connect with something bigger than ourselves.
Makes you feel like a kid again.
And from this deep dive into curiosity and mindset, we transition to something a bit more lighthearted, the power of play.
Okay, sounds fun.
This is where Sophie's personality really shines. She shares some hilarious anecdotes.
Oh, I love a good story. Give me an example.
Well, there's this one where she put soothing cream on a sunburned guy on a plane, and the guy was totally intoxicated.
Oh my God, classic Sophie.
It just shows her generosity and that ability to find humor even in the most unexpected situations.
Yeah, she's great. And then there's that prank call she made to her mother-in-law.
Oh, right, about the bear.
Yes, about a dangerous bear lurking near their cottage.
She's such a prankster. It highlights how laughter and playfulness can really bring people together.
Even if it's at someone else's expense.
Right. But Sophie goes beyond just telling funny stories. She brings in experts like the comedian Mary Walsh and neuroscientist Dr. Adam Anderson.
Okay, a comedian and a brain scientist, interesting combo.
They discuss the real benefits of laughter and play, like how it can actually impact our well-being.
It's not just about having fun.
Exactly. Dr. Anderson even talks about how our brains are wired for creativity, that ability to adapt and find new solutions, even when things are tough.
It's like that flow state when you're completely immersed in something you love.
Right, you're in the zone.
Yeah, and it's a good reminder that play isn't just for kids, it's important for adults too.
Absolutely. And speaking of things that are good for us, Sophie talks about her personal journey with yoga and how it's helped her well-being.
Ah, yoga, it's the best.
She emphasizes the importance of finding an activity you enjoy that also helps you feel grounded.
I think everyone needs that.
And she doesn't just talk about it. She actually gives specific techniques that we can easily try.
Oh, cool. Like what?
Well, there's this focused gaze exercise for calming the nervous system.
I've never heard of that one.
And there's Deb Dana's savoring practice, where you intentionally focus on those small, joyful moments throughout the day.
That's a good one. It's all about training our minds to appreciate the good stuff.
Right. And then there's this really interesting discussion about the vagus nerve,
Vagus nerve, okay.
which is this powerful connection between our brain and our body.
Right.
And Sophie explains how understanding this connection can help us access a state of calmness and connection.
Like a secret weapon against stress.
It's pretty amazing because it shows us that we have more control over our emotional state than we might think. It's like we've got this built-in system for regulating our emotions, and we can learn to actually use it. Wow, this deep dive has covered a lot. Childhood experiences, finding purpose, navigating all those relationships, taking care of our well-being, embracing playfulness. What stands out to you the most?
You know, it's funny. The theme of connection keeps popping up.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like a thread through all of this.
it's true.
That early childhood stuff, the attachment, then building those meaningful relationships as adults, even the ways we connect with ourselves through mindfulness and play.
It all comes back to that, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Makes me wonder, knowing how much those early experiences shape us, how can we become more aware of our own attachment patterns and triggers?
That's the big question, isn't it? Understanding those deep-rooted patterns so that we can make more conscious choices in our relationships.
And create a better life for ourselves. It's like this journey of self-discovery, this deep dive into our own inner world.
I like that.
But the good news is, we don't have to do it alone. We can learn from other people's experiences. Find that support through connection.
Yeah. It's a lifelong process, that's for sure, full of ups and downs.
Absolutely.
But ultimately, it's about recognizing our potential for growth and healing and connection.
Couldn't have said it better myself. This has been such a great conversation. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. I hope everyone listening found it as thought-provoking as I did.